Now, welcome everyone to the updated Combined Sewer Overflow Control Plans, Tools and Alternatives Development public meeting. Very happy to have you all here. This is the third public meeting for this project, and my name is Ona Ferguson from the Consensus Building Institute. I'm here with Abby Fulham and Elizabeth Cooper to help kind of work through the evening with you. Our agenda has three main sections. We are going to give an overview of the process and sort of where we are in this process and some of the key concepts that are important to understand about combined sewer overflows. And then we're going to talk through the 6 major tools for addressing combined sewer overflows. And then we're going to talk about community values and goals and priorities and ask for your input on how we should be thinking about those things as the work advances. And the meeting will wrap up at 8 o'clock. I want to say before we go any further that there is a project website. We're going to put that link into the chat for everyone. You can sign up there to be on a list of people who get notified about events like this. You can also sign up online to get notified of combined sewer overflow events. And you can find previous meeting recordings and meeting materials. So that website is voice.somerville.ma/joint-CSO-planning. I hope I read that correctly. We will also be taking notes on tonight's meeting, and we're going to post the recording, and we will post a brief summary of the meeting and the input. So thank you again for being here. I want to introduce the kind of project partners who are here together hosting this meeting. All 3 are putting in significant effort on this multi-year project. So it's the City of Somerville, the City of Cambridge, and the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority. And you will see the sort of panelists. You can see our staff and technical teams from each of those 3 entities. Let me see what else. I also want to thank the Charles River Watershed Association, Save the Alewife Brook, and the Mystic River Watershed Association for their help thinking through some of the aspects of this evening's meeting and on the project overall. And with that, we're going to jump into what is this project we're talking about, all of this work, what are the key concepts? And I'm going to hand this over to Luchika Hiller at the City of Somerville.
Thank you, Ona. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. My name is Luchika Hiller. I'm the Stormwater Program Manager for the City of Somerville and the Project Manager for the Somerville Updated CSO Control Plan Project. Next slide, Erica. As the focus of this meeting and our work for the foreseeable future is combined sewer overflows, which throughout this presentation, we will abbreviate as CSO. Let's spend a few minutes together going over some quick facts. Combined sewer systems, like the ones in Somerville, Cambridge, Boston, Chelsea, and a lot of other older cities in the US and Europe were built around 150 years ago to function exactly as they're functioning today. Historically, combined systems collected sewage, that is what we flush and drain in our homes or businesses, and stormwater, the rainwater that falls on the ground, into one pipe, and that gets released through a pipe and an outfall into a brook, a river, a lake, a wetland. In our area today, during no or moderate rain, like you see in the image to your left, this combined flow goes to the MWRA Deer Island Wastewater Treatment Plant for treatment. During heavy rains, when the combined system is overwhelmed, a spill of combined sewer through the outfall pipe will relieve the system. That spill is what we call a combined sewer overflow. It's important to note that the majority of the combined sewer overflows in our area are treated to remove some of the pollutants before being released into the rivers. One notable exception is the CSOs in the Wife Brook, which are currently not treated. If this release was not allowed, for example, by closing the sewer regulator that you see in this image in the circle, next slide, please, Erica, that combined sewer flow will find a place to go. And that place is our basements, and that is called a sewer backup, like in the rendering on our left, or our streets. And when that happens, it is called a sanitary sewer overflow, as you can see in the picture on the right. Sewer backups and sanitary sewer overflows are a more immediate threat to public health than CSOs. If you've been following combined sewer overflows, you probably noticed that the number of CSOs change from year to year, and the volumes of these spills also change every time it rains. Why is that? The main reason is that no two rainstorms are the same. And based on years of data we have collected, we know that CSOs are influenced by how hard it is raining, how long does it rain, and where does the rain fall. For example, a heavy rain event in one side of the city may cause a CSO, but if it falls in a slightly different location, it may not. This table here is meant to highlight some of that. Just looking at the last 2 years, 2021 and 2022, you see that 2021 was what we call a wet year. The total rain during that year was higher than the average in our region, which is 44 inches, while 2022 was a dry year. Additionally, in 2021, we experienced more heavy rainstorms that lasted longer than we have experienced in 2022. As expected, the total CSO volumes, both treated and untreated, into the Charles, the Mystic, and the Wife Brook, are significantly different from almost 238 million gallons in 2021 to less than 4 million gallons in 2022. Remember when I said that combined sewer overflows are a combination of stormwater and sewage, both of which carry a number of pollutants. Pathogens like bacteria and viruses are found in both stormwater and sewage, and they can make us sick if swallowed. Nutrients like phosphorus, again, found in both, are vital for agriculture and our perfect lawns. They harm the fish in the rivers. Wipes and trash hurt our environment. These stormwater and sewage pollutants have a negative impact on the water quality of our rivers, the health of the ecosystem and environment, and last but not least, our health. Because of the negative impacts to our health, please avoid contact with the water for 48 hours during and after heavy rains. To get notified as soon as a CSO spills and to find out where that CSO happened, you can sign up at these 3 links included here and also posted in the chat. For MWRA CSOs, you can sign up at bit.ly/MWRA reports. For Cambridge's CSOs, you can sign up at www.cambridgema.gov/subscribe. And for Somerville CSOs, you can sign up at www.somervillema.gov/CSO. Other CSO communities in the region, like Chelsea and Boston, have similar notification websites. Now I'm going to pass it over to Catherine Woodbury from Cambridge, as she will talk to you about the work we've been doing for the past couple of years.
Thank you, Luchika. Hi, my name is Catherine Woodbury, and I am a Senior Project Manager at the Cambridge Department of Public Works, and I am working as the program manager for Cambridge for this project. So you heard a lot about CSOs. So what are we doing to help reduce CSOs? CSOs are located along the banks of the Alewife Brook, the Mystic River, and the Charles River. These CSOs are connected by MWRA facilities such as large collector pipes, pump stations, storage, and/or treatment facilities. Each entity has been implementing projects to reduce CSOs over many decades, and we have significantly reduced the amount of CSOs that were occurring in the Alewife Brook, Mystic River, and Charles River since the beginning of the initial MWRA long-term control plan in 1998. We are now working to further reduce CSOs through our current efforts to create 3 separate updated CSO control plans. The CSO system is a complex and interconnected network. What each individually entity does can impact the CSOs in other communities or elsewhere in the system. So it is important that we work closely together as we begin to identify alternatives to help us further reduce or eliminate CSOs. Next slide, please. The timeline to develop updated combined sewer overflow plans is a multi-year project that will take us through the year 2026. Tonight is our 3rd combined public meeting to discuss the tools that we can use to create alternative projects to reduce or eliminate CSOs. Our goal during these meetings is to check in with you, the public and stakeholders, to solicit feedback as we take incremental steps in the development of our draft updated CSO control plans. The United States Environmental Protection Agency and the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection have reviewed and approved this schedule so that we can accommodate the public outreach needed for this process, and as we work to also engage and reach out to the environmental justice populations impacted by this planning effort. I want to add that that in addition to these large joint public meetings, we are also individually attending neighborhood and community events to reach residents in their neighborhoods and engage environmental justice populations and communities. There is a lot of work and analysis to do before we will be ready to begin screening alternatives and developing our draft updated CSO control plans. Currently, these plans are not due until the spring of the year 2026. Additional combined public meetings will be scheduled to discuss program elements as we get further along and before decisions are made. Next slide, please. So how are we going to get there? What are the tools that we are using? The core of our technical evaluation is a hydraulic and hydrologic model that simulates pipes, pump stations, and treatment facilities. When different rain events are added to the model, it can estimate the volume of CSOs in event flooding. In order to test our ideas, we need a powerful evaluation tool that can show us if the alternative projects can reduce CSOs and by how much. One such a tool is our combined or unified computer model. When different rain events are added to the model, it can estimate the volume of CSOs in event flooding for the study area. This unified model was created by stitching together the detailed MWRA, Cambridge, and Somerville computer models. The green in this map shows the level of detail that we have in our combined model. Since we are each developing separate plans for our own CSOs, and these CSOs are interconnected, the unified model will produce consistent results that will show system-wide impacts. Next slide, please. Another important tool for our evaluation includes the rain events used in the model. We all know the conditions are going to change, and the graph shows how today's rainfall looks compared to how future rainfall is expected to look. We can see from our work to understand future rainfall patterns that the storms will be larger and heavier rains and occurring more frequently. An example of this is that a storm with the volume of rain that's expected to happen only once every year is projected to occur twice a year in the future. We have identified a future year of rainfall to be used in combination with our unified model, and that year is referred to as the 2050 typical year. Next, please. So in CSO planning, the typical year has two main purposes. One, to evaluate and compare potential CSO reduction projects, and two, to assess progress once projects are implemented. A full year of rain data that best represents rain over time is a way of explaining what the typical year is. It also is a representative average year for planning as rain changes from year to year. The graph shows how the total rainfall in a year can be very different from the year before it or the years after it. Using the same typical year is crucial in making sure that our evaluations are consistent and comparing the same rain conditions. Next, please. For this effort, we're using a typical year that accounts for climate change with more intense and more frequent rainfall. In the second public meeting, we described the very detailed peer-reviewed analysis done to develop the 2050 typical year. When we modeled CSO volumes for the current typical year, that's the typical year that is used in the current MWRA long-term control plan, which is represented as the 1992 typical year in the chart to the right, and compared it to the future 2050 typical year. As expected, significantly more CSOs are projected. Our planning process will go above and beyond regulatory requirements and will use typical conditions of the future in our analysis. This is the first effort in the nation to use climate change science in creating its typical year. While the typical year is used to identify CSO reduction projects, more extreme events, also called design storms, are also used to evaluate alternatives. Next.
Great. Thank you, Luchika and Catherine. Let's take down the slides for a few minutes. We have time for some clarifying questions, and actually let's pause for a sec just on interpretation. We're having a Portuguese glitch, maybe. Meredith, is there anything we can do to help?
Yes. We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks all. So there have been some questions written, and the technical team is responding to some of those in writing. But if you have questions about the kind of key pieces that were just presented, feel free to, you can raise your hand. So members of the public, you can raise your hand, or you can type questions in and we will read those. And I think let's take first, I see David White has a hand. So David, I'm gonna unmute you and invite you to ask your question.
Okay.
There you are.
Okay, thank you. Based on historical data, the typical year does not really represent the average year in terms of CSO discharges. For example, in the recent years, 2015 to 2021, the average rainfall averaged a little less than the typical year, but the discharges in White Brook were more than twice what the typical year predicted. Discharge increases in wet years much more than increase in rainfall. How do you plan to address this in the current analysis? For example, consider 10-year storms to represent the extreme conditions.
Thank you, David. I see that's also written if anybody wants to go into the details there. Who on the technical team want to respond to that about these kind of complicated questions about what's getting input here?
Una, I can respond to that. My name is Indrani Ghosh. I am working on the Cambridge team as part of this project. We did consider the rainfall, the annual rainfall amounts for 2015 through 20 as well as 2021. We looked at a historic period that encompassed those years when we developed the future typical year. In addition to that, we looked at future climate change projections that consider more intense and frequent storms. And that was how the typical year was developed. And to the question related to whether 10 more extreme storms, such as the 10-year storms, will be considered, that is something that will be considered as part of the planning process.
Thank you, Indrani. David. I don't see any other hands. Are there other, Elizabeth, are you seeing other live kind of questions in the Q&A that we would want to take live? Let's see.
I think there's a couple others that we can provide some technical responses to that we're working to provide.
Technical team, any you want to grab verbally versus in writing? All right, I see now 3 hands up. We'll take Gwen and then Max and then Susan. Gwen, go ahead. You can unmute yourself now. Gwen, you will have to unmute. Or if you're on a phone, you can hit *6.
When I just prompted you, so maybe you'll get a pop-up on your screen.
Sorry, I'm deferring my question till later. I was trying to lower my hand. Apologies.
Great, no problem. Max, we will allow you to talk. You should be able to unmute.
Oh, and I just put the question in the chat too. Just looking for clarification about that design storm question. Is there a commitment to analyzing design storms throughout this process, or is that something that's kind of, it's unclear what the strategy is going to be right now around that? And I'll just say editorially, from the Charles River watershed's perspective, we would love to see systematic analysis of a 5-year, 10-year storm as you're doing these model runs.
Thanks, Max. Technical team, anybody? Brian, I see you went off mute.
Yeah, so I think as we go through our analysis, we will need to look at some of the larger storms, design storms, and there's need to make sure that we don't cause any problems in the collection system as a result of a alternative. So we'll look at those design storms to see how well they perform, and to also make sure that we're not causing an adverse or some impact from something that we propose to do to help reduce CSOs.
Thanks, Brian. Let's go to Susan. Susan Chapnick, you should now be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Susan Chapnick. I'm the chair of the Conservation Commission in the town of Arlington. I just wanted clarification on when we're actually going to get some relief. I respect that this is a really big problem, and we need to coordinate lots of municipalities as well as residents and technical people. However, it seems to me that there's not going to be any relief for at least 5-8 years. Can somebody give some clarity on when we're actually going to start implementing some of the solutions? Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Time frame question. Who has a good handle on what that might look like?
I'll attempt to take it again. This is Brian Kaboska as well. I'm with the MWRA. I'm the chief engineer. So we have been working to resolve CSOs for many years. This is the second CSO control plan that we are going into. We have made many improvements to the area you're specifically interested in, Susan, the Outlet Brook area, including constructing a wetland to help reduce or eliminate overflows at CAM 4, adjustments to regulator structures, some of these devices that try to minimize the amount of overflow into the river. This is our second one. The process does take time. We are, in terms of when we'll see improvements, the plan, the final updated CSO control plan will be submitted in December of 2026. We got a little bit of ways to go from there. And then beyond December 2026, we will work with EPA and such to develop a schedule. That schedule, I believe, will actually be part of the plan to sketch out when and how long it's going to be before these projects that come out of this plan are implemented.
Thanks, Brian. All right, let's take another maybe question or two from the written Q&A. I know people are working on getting responses to those out in writing. I wonder, Elizabeth Cooper, do you have a sense of one or two we could grab?
Yeah, Al is wondering about how outreach was done to EJ communities, so maybe somebody from the team could respond to that.
Thank you.
I was just about to respond to the typed question. Thank you for the question. Our teams here, both in Somerville and Cambridge, have helped with the outreach. It was done through multiple channels, including flyers, which we have translated. You will see it on our website. Digital outreach in all 8 languages that we have identified as EJ languages in the communities surrounding these water bodies. And we also did direct outreach through our community engagement teams of the city of Cambridge and the SOIA team from the city of Somerville. We continue to translate materials in languages, provide interpretation. Thank you.
Thank you, Cambridge or MWRA. Any other additions to that?
No, I think Luchika covered those. Thank you.
Great, thanks. I think I saw a hand, but now it's down, so I'm going to assume some of these questions are getting responded to. Why don't we want to shift actually to the presenting the toolbox? So I think let's go, we'll do that piece. I think it takes 15 or 20 minutes to go through the 6 primary tools. As you can see, you can keep adding questions as they arise into the written Q&A or hold them for after the presentation, and we'll have some more time to take questions then. So we want, next we're going to talk about these 6 tools, and we're going to go through them one at a time. And I'm going to give this to Catherine Woodbury to start us off.
Great. Next slide, please. So there are 2 main approaches to managing combined sewer overflows. One approach includes tools to reduce CSOs, and the other approach is to treat the CSOs. We have 5 tools that help us manage, reduce, or eliminate combined sewer overflows. And these tools include sewer separation, green stormwater infrastructure, inflow and infiltration reduction, storage, and the last is conveyance. Treatment has 1 tool, and it includes a process that partially cleans or treats the water before it overflows, and includes screening, disinfecting, and dechlorinization. The effectiveness of each of these tools will vary. Some tools manage CSOs more effectively. Some are more easily implemented than others in key areas. Some cost more to build, and some require more land to implement. So we'll talk about each tool individually. Next, please. So one tool for reducing CSOs is sewer separation. In a combined sewer system, most sewers and stormwater during no rain or up to moderate rain events allow all flows to go to the Deer Island treatment facility. But during heavy or intense rains, CSOs can occur, resulting in CSOs spilling to local rivers. In the combined system, if the combined system is separated, a second pipe network is built so that sewer and stormwater flows can each be carried separately in separate pipes. You can see in the image in the far right that when separated, sewer flows will continue to go to Deer Island, and all stormwater flows are redirected to spill to the rivers. Next slide, please. A part of this planning effort and includes to be evaluated for sewer separation are extensive. So the areas here on the map that are shaded or hatched, those represent the areas in Somerville, Cambridge, and Boston with combined sewer systems. And those represent approximately 5,900 acres of land. So throughout the year, most stormwater from these areas is currently being treated at Deer Island, except for when a CSO occurs. Separation of these areas would put stormwater into local waterways, which would require us to also manage potential flooding and water quality from those additional discharges. Next slide, please. Sewer separation is an effective tool to reduce CSOs since it removes the majority of the stormwater from the sewer pipes and sends it directly to the rivers. Sewer separation often requires significant constructions in streets, providing us with an opportunity to replace older pipes with new pipes. This work can also cause disruption to other existing utilities such as gas lines, water, telecommunication, and smaller pipes, which may require relocation, allowing us to upgrade these utilities as part of the project. Once separated, stormwater will go directly to local rivers in every storm event. As we said earlier, stormwater also carries pollutants, which can degrade water quality. Adding more stormwater to the local rivers must not worsen flooding or overall water quality. Therefore, sewer separation must also require additional tools to treat stormwater and manage flood impacts within our rivers and communities. Sewer separation often involves street-by-street construction and can often require multiple phases of work on the same street to sequence the relocation and upgrade of different utilities, each contributing to noise, traffic, and parking impacts along streets and in neighborhoods. For those attendees at tonight's meeting that have lived or worked or commuted through West Cambridge during the years of 2012 through 2017, I'm sure you can remember the extensive disruption caused by the separating sewers in the West Cambridge neighborhood. These are some of the consideration we have to think about if we select sewer separation as a tool for CSO management. I'll now turn this over to Luchika to discuss another CSO reduction tool, green stormwater infrastructure. Thank you.
The next tool is a very beloved tool. Thank you. I want to acknowledge the emails we have been receiving from the Charles River Watershed Association folks. It's my favorite tool too. Green stormwater infrastructure systems are engineered systems that mimic natural processes. In our dense urban environment, these look like the image you see here, right? A small planting bump out, or sometimes we call it a bioretention garden, where space allows. It could be a little bit bigger, like rain gardens. Some, and a lot of them, are mostly underground, is what we call subsurface infiltration trenches. And if and when space allows us, they could be constructed wetlands. And I think a lot of you are very familiar with the Alewife wetland. The system collects some of the stormwater runoff before entering the pipe system. And they can also treat the stormwater to reduce some of the pollutants. In our area, one of the pollutants of concern is phosphorus. Next slide, Erica. Our work so far, looking at ways to reduce flooding and now ways to reduce CSOs, is finding that green stormwater infrastructure has limited CSO reduction benefits. And that is mostly because the systems we can install in our communities tend to be small, and they can only capture the beginning of a storm and are full by the time the heavy rain starts. And if you remember, heavy rains are when CSOs happen. Green infrastructure, if above ground and if it includes plants and trees, can add green space to our communities, and the trees can help reduce the urban heat island effect. It can recharge our groundwater and improve our stormwater water quality. But the challenges we face range from finding the space to install them, when we're also considering other uses and needs for our streets and sidewalks and parks and open spaces. So, we have to think of bike lanes, parking, mature trees and their roots, bus routes and stops. In the long term, the system needs specialized monthly maintenance. Overall, we consider green stormwater infrastructure a net benefit to our communities, and we are looking to install them whenever possible. Now I will hand it over to Jeremy, who will talk to you about a few more CSO reduction tools.
Thank you, Luchika. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jeremy Hall. I am a program manager at the MWRA. I've been managing the MWRA's combined sewer overflow post-construction monitoring program for the past 6 years. Tonight, I'll give you a brief overview of some additional tools to help reduce CSOs. So on this slide, we're discussing inflow and infiltration. The top left shows which is inflow, which is actually surface water runoff that enters a sewer system. Inflow could come from gaps in manhole covers, broken pipes, illegal connections, such as roof leaders, cellar drains, yard drains, or catch basins. In the picture on the right, we see a picture of infiltration, which occurs when groundwater enters the sewer system. Infiltration can be caused by cracks, holes, tree roots, or bad connections. Under these conditions, groundwater can enter the sewer and increase the volume in the sanitary sewer system. Next page. So what we're looking at on this slide are back one. Yep. Thank you. What we are looking at on this slide are 4 distinct areas, the 4 different colors shown, or you can notice with the different hatching, that are upstream of CSO communities that have permitted CSO outfalls. These highlighted areas have separate sewers and drain systems. And I want to point out that these communities that are highlighted have been implementing an II removal projects for over 20 years. Next slide. So generally speaking, II projects have a limited CSO reduction benefit. II programs are great at renewing the pipe infrastructure, so that's a really good thing. II reduction projects do come with the following impacts. They do tend to cause local street-by-street construction issues, noise during construction, traffic during construction, and temporary parking bans to allow for construction activities. Next slide, please. So another tool that we have is storage. The picture that we're looking at on this screen is of the Union Park storage basin, which holds 2.2 million gallons. The site takes up 1.3 acres in the middle of Boston's South End. Using storage as a CSO reduction tool can be effective. The benefit of this tool comes from the ability to hold combined sewage during a large storm event until the sanitary system has capacity to convey the storm water or the stored water and bring it to the treatment plant. By the way, storage can also be accomplished by installing large underground pipes to hold and release the stored water. Next slide. So storage of combined sewage is an effective tool to reduce CSOs. As shown on the previous slide, storage requires a lot of space. Construction of a storage facility is a large undertaking that will generate noise, truck traffic for months and months. Once the facilities are completed, noise can be heard from the ventilation systems in the pump back facilities when they are in operation. Next slide, please. So on this slide, we're going to be discussing a topic that's, a little bit more aggressive in the terms of what it can do, and that is called what we refer to as conveyance. And conveyance is increasing the size of existing pipes and facilities, and this is an effective tool in reducing CSOs. For example, shown on this screen, we look at what we would need to happen if we made the Alewife Brook pump station larger. In order to pump more water, additional improvements to the sewer system would need to be made. The image shows pipes and facilities that would need to be replaced with larger pipes and/or facilities improvements. I think we're on the next page, Erica. To give you a sense of the scale, the green line is 1.6 miles. I don't know if you can look here in sort of the middle top left corner, there's a green line, and that line represents 1.6 miles of very large sewer pipes. And in addition, the red line, which begins where the green line ends and goes all the way down diagonal across your screen, that pipe is actually 11 miles, and that also would need to be replaced. And before any of the green or the red are replaced, we would have to do major work at Chelsea Creek Headworks, Deer Island Treatment Plant. We're talking huge projects. And so while no doubt this would help reduce CSOs, it would also be the most expensive option discussed tonight. Next page, please. So to recap, increasing the size of the pipes and facilities would be an effective tool to reduce CSOs. It would renew the service life of the interceptors involved, the headworks, and the facility known as Deer Island Treatment Plant. The downside is that it is a very, very large undertaking that would take many years to plan and construct. Realistically speaking, it would be incredibly difficult to locate the space needed in these urban areas to install these extremely large interceptor pipes and to acquire the land that the facility upgrades require to get the benefits that we would see from increasing our conveyance. If this tool were to be selected, we're talking about years of construction impacts, noise, and tremendous expense. Next slide, please. So we talked about sewer separation, green stormwater infrastructure, inflow and infiltration reduction, storage, and conveyance. While these are all tools to help reduce volume, we now are going to talk briefly about treatment. So if you go to the next slide. So how is treatment a tool? Well, treatment won't reduce CSOs, but in some situations, adding a facility to treat combined sewers flow is the best option. While not reducing CSOs, treatment can remove trash, kill bacteria, and reduce sediment before the flow enters the wastewater stream and before it enters the receiving water. Next slide, please. So treatment is an effective tool to protect the water body. However, CSO treatment facilities need to be located close to existing CSO outfalls and receiving waters. CSO treatment facilities are large industrial buildings. So some things to consider is the noise during construction, as well as the continuous need to replenish the chemical supply requiring large trucks to access the facility after it is operational. So I hope we gave you some insight on the types of tools that we would be evaluating. Thank you.
I think Luchika, you were just going to say a final thing or two, and then we'll pause for questions.
Yeah, so I see in the Q&A a lot of people have suggestions already, which is great. Thank you. And this kind of relates to that, right? We have all these great tools. Oh, Erica, you can share the presentation again, please. So we have all these great tools, right? And now the work begins. These tools are the building blocks that we will use to develop CSO control alternatives for this plan. At the end of the planning work in 2026, CSO control alternatives will be projects that we can build to further reduce or eliminate combined sewer overflows. Again, these tools will not be used in isolation, but instead they will be combined. And then you see here sort of graphically some examples like alternatives 1, 2, 3. This combining of alternatives will happen at different scales, right? Could be larger or smaller and at different locations depending on the CSO reduction target, the areas, and other things we have to consider. An important note here is that regardless of the CSO benefit, if there are any major construction in a public street, green stormwater infrastructure is always considered as part of the restoration of that street for both Somerville and Cambridge. That was a question that I saw in the Q&A as well. Once alternatives are created, we will need to evaluate and compare them using criteria that is aligned both with regulatory requirements and our community values and priorities. And that's what we're here to talk about today. And that's going to be the next part of our presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Suchika. Thanks, everybody. Let's pause now and take some questions. I think there's a question in writing about Somerville compliance that, let's take down the slide. We'll hang out with faces for a few minutes. Thank you. Rich, can you pick up the Somerville compliance question?
Sure, this is a very complicated one, and I can understand why there's some confusion there, and it's popped up in the written Q&A. So I just like to sort of give some context for this.
Can you read the question before you start answering, please?
Can you read the question?
I would like to be able to. I have to find it.
I can at least, it's been asked a few times, so I can just share but concerned that of compliance with the Clean Water Act, which I think has been addressed in writing, but maybe you can clarify, Rich, and then also issues with the variance permit, noting particular questions about whether that is being complied with and followed through.
Correct. So our reporting requirements, we've been fulfilling all of those. What you see as the yardstick for discharges from SOM 001A, the CSO outfall that is permitted to Somerville, was established from the long-term control plan and all the great work that MWRA and the partner cities completed over the past several decades. It is accurate to say that the discharges from SOM 1A are higher than what was predicted from that long-term control plan. However, it is also accurate to say that the discharges from the other half dozen CSOs on the alewife that are nominally permitted to Cambridge and MWRA are well below their discharge projections from that long-term control plan. And the fact of the matter is that the system works like a system. Somerville and MWRA could tomorrow go in and do a project that would put SOM 1A well below that permit limitation. However, as a result, the CSOs ostensibly assigned to Cambridge and MWRA would then become well above their permit limitations. This is exactly why we are in this process that we're in right now. And that was predicted from the last long-term control plan and the issuance of the variances for the Charles and the Mystic and the Alewife, was that there's a possibility that at the end of that previous set of projects, like the CAM4 separation, that this whole system wouldn't be in compliance or there would be other water quality issues, which is exactly why we're in this process we're in right now, to look at the water quality and figure out what the next steps are. So when you look at what it is that we are doing now, what has been done, the situation of the discharges and what we are doing now, this all constitutes compliance. We would be non-compliant if we just walked away and said we're not ever going to do anything ever and just leave it the way it is. That's not what we're doing. There's also a little bit of confusion, and we're happy to, and Somerville's already changed what it is doing on the physical inspection of the SOM 1A CSO discharge or the physical outfall. There was a requirement to physically inspect that once a month. And that dates back to before the technology was available to continuously meter we put in a meter with continuous telemetry in that, and that's actually how the CSO notifications, that's the engine behind that. You know, we've got every 5 minutes, we have data on that CSO, and that informs the CSO notification. When that went in, the sewer department's practice of having to physically go out to the site and check the CSO to see if it had spilled stopped, because it wasn't something that they had to do for that compliance. It's been brought to our attention that physical inspection is something that we need to do. So we've tasked the sewer department with that monthly inspection and that record keeping, again, in addition to having telemetry from that outfall every 5 minutes. So, you know, we're to say that Somerville is not in compliance is not accurate. So, you know, again, it's a very confusing set of circumstances. So I just wanted to clear that up.
Thank you, Rich. Let's take, we have 2 hands up. We'll take Beth and then Doug. Beth, I'm gonna allow you should now be able to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Beth Malofchik, town meeting member, Arlington, Massachusetts. First of all, I'd like to state I'm offended that the map that was displayed to open the meeting did not have Arlington designated. And I would like to say that I've heard a lot of bureaucrats speak, and I've heard a lot of bureaucraties. I've heard excuses. For 100 years, I believe Arlington's been used as an open sewer for neighboring communities. So I think we need an immediate Somerville SWAT team to be, and perhaps Cambridge too, but I think Somerville is the problem, to be deployed when we have raw sewage coming into the Alewife Brook, coming over the path. In the past, it's been in people's yards and basements. Does Somerville come out and clean that up? Are we alerted in real time that these CSOs are discharging and that there's going to be a problem in the Alewife Brook Park there? We weren't the last time. We had baby carriages and children on bicycles going through this human effluent. I don't think that's compliance. If that's compliance, we need to redefine it. I'm upset. I'm upset for my neighbors who live in these neighborhoods, who have homes abutting what is a convenience for MWRA, what is a convenience for the community of Somerville to have their raw sewage and waste overflowing in our community, immediate public health threats to our community. Where's the solution? We need an immediate solution. This has been going on too long. It's been an economic convenience and a budgetary convenience for other communities who are releasing their raw waste into our community. It's time to stop it. Again, Beth Malofchik, town meeting member. We're not putting up with this anymore. This is ridiculous. And if we need a new team at MWRA, let's do that. We'll get a new petition. We want solutions. We don't want an hour-long meeting explaining to us something is too expensive or it won't work or there's going to be noise or traffic. Are you people for real? Noise and traffic? We have human waste in our neighborhoods. I'm sorry, but you're absurd. Thank you very much. Thank you for hearing me out in the spirit of the leadership of the Commonwealth. I appreciate that. And hail to Louise Barron. Thank you very much.
Beth. And Doug Brown, I'm going to allow you to unmute now. You should, I think, be able to do that.
Got it. Can you hear me?
You can. Welcome.
Thanks. Doug Brown, Cambridge, Mass. Been a member of the city's climate resilient task force and also the Alewife rezoning task force. I just wanted to get a clarification. You know, there was a slide that showed, you know, the length of the pipe that would need to extend all the way out to Deer Island. So it was a 10-mile pipe, and then there was another 1 or 2 mile pipe. And so the suggestion there is that we would replace the existing pipe with a much bigger pipe that could handle the combined flow. But there was also a slide earlier on where you mentioned, where you were showing how a CSO works, and you showed a picture of a separated system, and it said that in the separated system, the stormwater just goes directly to the river. And so my question is, which is it? Does the stormwater go into the river directly, in which case we just need a short pipe to get to the river? Or does the stormwater go into a combined pipe and go all the way to Deer Island and be treated? Because it seems like the cost associated with each option is dramatically different. So I'm just trying to get some clarification about what that potential solution would look like. Thanks.
Technical team members, somebody want to take that?
I'll take a shot at that, Ona. So Doug, you know, right now a good portion of the system is combined. So both the sanitary flow and the stormwater goes into pipes all throughout Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, some of Chelsea and such. The first step in the process, if we were going to move that stormwater into the rivers or brooks or whatever it is to do sewer separation. So create another pipe, stormwater goes in one pipe, sanitary flow goes in the other. If you know the slide that showed the very long length, a 10-mile length to get to Deer Island, if we were to just say, okay, we don't want to put that stormwater in the rivers and such because it does contain bacteria. It's going to impact, phosphorus levels and such. If we wanted to just get that to Deer Island for treatment, it would require, substantially increasing the size of the pipes and, other facilities on the way to Deer Island. It's a substantial, very substantial effort to do that type of work. Hopefully that answered your question.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Doug. All right, we're going to take a couple of questions from the written questions, and I will say we have about 50 questions that have been asked in writing, many of them answered. Thank you for those of you kind of getting in there. Elizabeth, do you want to read those or do you want me to?
Sure, I can relay a couple, and I'll just note all thanks for your patience, just trying to figure out how to respond accurately and who's the best to respond to all these questions. So we're keeping up as well as we can, though we might not be able to do so perfectly. But a couple that I thought could be relevant for many folks to hear. Jessica Kinner asked a question about, can we do anything as local residents to help you get this done faster or to help accomplish this? That's one. And then several folks are asking about the quantity that could be addressed through storage. And maybe folks could just help clarify how we are going to go about figuring out what each of the tools can do and what the process will be to get there.
Thank you.
I didn't take the task of assigning those answers to somebody, but I can if you want me to.
I can give a quick answer. That's where we're gonna go from today, right? Trying to quantify sort of these volumes. And we're gonna do that using the model, the unified model that Catherine talked about, the typical year design storms, to understand, right, like the space that we will need to make some of these options. I hope that answered somewhat the question.
The one about storage, which is we're not sure how much of these different tools can be applied yet. We have to run them through this whole analysis together. The first question was, are there ways residents can help this team that's trying to get there? Any ideas of things that would be helpful?
I would say what you all are doing tonight, where you're providing constructive feedback to help us guide to help the partners guide the development of alternatives, which is what Luchika is talking about coming next, is one really helpful, constructive way to engage.
Yeah, I do want to echo Elizabeth's sort of comment on that. You know, from a technical perspective, this is a very complicated thing. Again, if it was easy, we would have already done it, right? And I think most of the folks that you see here from the technical teams, both from the cities, the MWRA, and our consultants, we all sort of wish that there was a simpler way to do this technical analysis and come up with answers. But the way that the general public can help us is to help us set those priorities. You know, the upsides and the downsides of the different alternatives that Luchika and Jeremy and Catherine spoke about. Like if we get more infrequent feedback on what is perceived as a pro and con of those different approaches, that's really helpful in us narrowing down the technical analysis. You know, focusing our energies, our modeling, our preliminary design on the solutions that resonate more with the folks in the neighborhoods. That's really the helpful thing, I think, in this sort of venue. I think is the best way to do that.
Thank you, Rich.
Luchika, do you want to just add on to that?
Quickly, please continue advocating for state and federal funding for water and sewer work. There is a once in a lifetime opportunity for federal money. It's not enough. It's not going to be enough. We need a lot more.
Thank you. We have two hands up, so we'll take Michael and then Julie. And then we're going to do we're going to talk about kind of community values and evaluation criteria. And then we'll have more time for some back and forth. So Michael, you should be able to unmute yourself and ask your question.
I'm sorry, I withdrew my question. It's okay.
Okay. Then let's go to Julie Wood. Go ahead.
Great. Thanks, Ona. Can you hear me?
You can.
Okay, great. Julie Wood, Charles River Watershed Association, also a Somerville resident. Admittedly more of a comment, but on your slide about reducing CSO tools, green stormwater infrastructure, the top header there, limited CSO reduction benefits. I think that would definitely relate to the assumptions we're making about how much green stormwater infrastructure we can incorporate. And as Luchika noted, to date, most of the GSI systems installed in urban areas, in our area anyway, have been small, with the exception of the Alewife wetland. And it seems to be that past experience that is leading to these fairly conservative assumptions about how much we can rely on GSI for CSO control. And I just want to note and again applaud that you guys have already demonstrated some ambitious thinking with the updated typical year, really looking into the future, imagining a world that's not the world we live in today. And I would beseech you to do the same with green stormwater infrastructure, not let our past experience with green stormwater infrastructure necessarily lead to these conservative assumptions about what we can do with GSI, and to start thinking more ambitiously, because we need to be ambitious with this extremely challenging issue, as you guys know, and we also need to be ambitious with what we're facing from climate change. So thanks. Excited to hear the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Julie.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. I do want to point out perhaps a little conservatism in our thinking in the way that we were looking at the GSI. I think Julie's point is well taken. Our next steps I think we will look a little bit more ambitiously at GSI, particularly GSI implementation on private property, and at least what Somerville can do to incentivize that, because there's, you know, if you think about what's in our control versus out of our control, like the rights of way is, you know, like 15% of our area, which leaves a vast untapped area that we could be incentivizing GSI. So we'll be taking another look through the modeling exercise and see what we can do there. I think our initial assumptions on that GSI run that Uchika presented was that we knew that GSI wasn't going to be 100% of the solution, and we didn't want to overestimate what GSI could do, in the idea that we're going to pair it with like a storage or sewer separation. And we didn't want to under project what we needed in terms of gray. But I think the downside of that is that we were less than ambitious in thinking about GSI. So we'll go back to the drawing board or the modeling computer and try to take another crack at that.
Thanks, Rich. Great. If we can get the slides back up just for a couple more minutes, we want to talk a little bit about community priorities. And there are almost 140 attendees in addition to the team you see in the panelist kind of window pane here. And I know all 140 of you are not asking questions or giving input. So we are going to shift to a different mode for a few minutes and let you give input that way. So we want to say this combined sewer overflow work is not happening in a vacuum, right? The communities and places we're working have a lot of different priorities and things that we're considering. And so I want to just share a little bit of the thinking around that. If we can go to the next slide. What both Somerville and Cambridge have been doing, like a lot of community planning and visioning for the future in the last decade. You know, there are plans for open space, climate resilience, for the general kind of land use planning for particular neighborhoods, for mobility. And from all those plans and all that engagement that went into developing those plans, we have a pretty good sense of the many priorities in our communities. So many of those are listed here. So we care about our community character, we care about the diversity of our community, we care about sustainability and also growth and innovation. We really value public health and safety and well-being. We want to be resilient. We want sound natural resources and a functioning urban ecosystem. Like all of these things matter. We value these things, we want to enhance and support them. So these values are driving the municipal and regional planning for all kinds of programs, right? Housing development, community assistance, stormwater management, urban heat management, streetscape and greenery design, traffic, public safety, you name it, right? This is being used to inform it. So we want the interests of the community to be shaping the decisions that are made. And we, as we know, have limited resources, financial, human, et cetera. And so want to be meeting a lot of interests when we take action, right? When we change this place that we call home. Let's go to the next slide. For this project in particular, nested within the larger community values, the project partners really want to implement this combined sewer overflow control in a way that intentionally is meeting multiple related priorities, right? For health and for safety, and other benefits to the community. So some of the partner goals for the project include protecting waterways and improving water quality, enhancing community co-benefits, establishing predictable and affordable sewer rates, building resilient infrastructure, broad community engagement, reducing flood and sewer backups, engaging with environmental justice communities, and improving public health and safety. So these are all going to be considered in the work in these next few years as the partners figure out what is going into these control plans. And we want to talk a little bit about the steps for doing that. And I'm going to hand this over to Luchika to talk about that. And then we want your input on a few of these pieces. So Luchika.
Thank you. So the first step, right? If you want to move to the next slide, thank you. We've gotten the tools lined up, and the first step in our planning work is to create the alternatives themselves, as mentioned earlier. And we would do that by combining the tools for each combined sewer outfall and its contributing area, as each outfall and area have unique challenges and opportunities. Once we have these alternatives, the second step is to do an initial selection. Just because an alternative sounds good, it doesn't mean it is good. And what do I mean by that, right? It has to answer a few very important questions. Does it reduce combined sewer overflows? Is it buildable? Is there a site to even build it on? Will it cause additional flooding in the streets or our rivers? Will it impact water quality in the rivers? For example, if one of the alternatives we develop is treatment for a specific CSO outfall, but there's no space or site to build that treatment facility, that alternative might not move forward, and a different alternative will be made to achieve maybe CSO reduction instead. Step 3 is taking the alternatives that pass that initial selection and evaluating and comparing them to each other based on how well they do at each of these criteria that I'm going to read out loud to you. And this is what we are looking to get your input on. So reduce, eliminate combined sewer overflows, reduce flooding and flooding impacts, reduce sanitary sewer overflows, improve water quality, improve our infrastructure for future generations too, right? Our pipes, our facilities, improve the resilience of our infrastructure to future climate conditions, improve the service we are providing to low-income and minority communities, offer community co-benefits, like we mentioned, green spaces, gathering spaces, urban heat island reduction, minimizing the neighborhood disruption, and minimize cost to ratepayer and taxpayers, and any other criteria that we will receive based on public feedback.
Great. Thank you. We are going to use what's called a Mentimeter tool. We want to hear your thoughts. So this is going out to the 135 of you who are still with us at 7:30 p.m. on a weeknight. Thank you. There are a couple of ways to do this. One is to stay on and play with us for another half hour. You're very welcome to do that. And we'll be walking you through this. Another is that the questions we're about to ask are also going to be available on a survey on the website, on the project website very soon. We will be letting everybody who registered for this meeting and anyone who is registered for project updates know when the survey is ready. It's going to be available in Spanish, Portuguese, and English. I'm saying that out loud, but I think that's right. So you can do it there, or you can stay and do it here with us. The questions we're asking are going to be the same, and that the online version will be available until December 31st. So there should be plenty of time to kind of spread the word. So if you are staying, which is great, please go to menti.com and you can use the QR code that's on the slide, or you can type it into the URL. So menti.com. And then you want to enter this code 26702429. And let's leave, yeah, okay, good, that's fine. The link is also in the chat now for the Menti poll. And you're gonna be able to see the questions come up here. I'm gonna read them for the interpretation and for anybody for whom that's an easier way to handle incoming information. And we're gonna start it, we're gonna walk through, I'll tell you ahead of time. We have a couple of questions just on like demographics, where you are, and then we want to hear kind of what you prioritize among those values that Luchika just named, those co-benefits. And then we have a few open-ended questions for you to share. Are there criteria missing from that list? You know, anything you want to say specifically about those specific criteria, and really in anything else open question. So that's what we're about to walk through. Let's go to the next slide, please. So please tell us where you live. And it's oddly appealing to watch this pie chart change real time as we go. Where are you from? And I don't, Abby, can you see the number, whoever responded? Is it giving you a total somewhere?
Yeah, it looks like we have about, well, 53 on the page, but I can't quite tell how many of those have responded. We'd have to add them up. And I'll just, one more reminder that this will be sent out as a survey. And so if you want a little more time to fill this out, you can do this on the survey.
Thank you. All right. Other people are still coming in. All right. The next question is, where do you work? And the choices, again, like before, are Arlington, Boston. Oh, I was going to read the list. Hang on. Arlington, Boston, Cambridge, Everett, Medford, Somerville, and other. Just trying to figure it out. I love all the representation from the different communities. It's so great. Thank you all. All right, next question, and this is going to be the most complicated, just as a task. So here's what we're going to ask you to do. Move around the different criteria by how important they are to you, how you would like them to be weighted in the evaluation of this, all of this. And I'm going to read you the criteria names one more time, so you have it out loud. So A is reducing, and I should say 1 is most important, 10 is least important. So A, reduce and eliminate combined sewer overflows. B, reduce flooding and flooding impacts. C, reduce sanitary sewer overflows. D, improve water quality. E, improve our infrastructure, so our pipes and facilities. F, improve resilience of our infrastructure to future climate conditions. G, improve service to low-income and minority communities. H, offer community co-benefits like green spaces, gathering spaces, heat reduction. I, minimize neighborhood disruption. And J, minimize cost to ratepayers and taxpayers. I'm going to give you a minute or two to sit with this. Abby, once we move to the next slide, people can't be back here, right? It cuts it off. Okay.
That's right.
Another little bit of time while I see people still playing. Thank you.
And right now, I think we had about 38 people respond, but on the past ones, we've had closer to 60.
All right. Looks like it's kind of settling. Oh, spoke too soon. Take another 20 seconds. All right. Thank you for doing that. Let's go to the next question. Please share any comments you have about specific criterion. So those 10 things we just listed, if you have a thought about one of them or a few of them, if you can be explicit, that's really helpful. And you can see the responses starting to go up. Any comments on these specific criteria? Just to remind you, the next two open-ended questions, the last two questions are going to be about sharing any other criteria we should consider and just a kind of anything else. So if you have something that's not about this, you can hold it for a minute and we'll have a space for that. Thanks, Abby, for scrolling. That's nice. Okay. I'm gonna do another 30 seconds on this one, and then we'll go to the question about if there are other criteria you would like to see considered. All right, let's go to the next. So next question is, if there was anything missing from that list that you would like the partners to consider, any kind of key values for the community, co-benefits we could be getting and should be thinking about, please share them here. And a reminder, we have a next question that's going to be for anything else. So if you have a kind of anything else question, if you could comment, if you can hold that. And this should just be about missing criteria, things that should be added. Thank you. It's helpful to have these. All right, gonna do another like 10 seconds on this one, then we'll go to the next. All right, Abby, next one, please. So this is the final question using this Menti tool. Please share anything else you would like to see, you would like the project team to know or consider. So any other thoughts, ideas, key points you want to share, feel free to put them right here. Thanks, everyone. Let's give this another minute or two because there's still some longer comments coming in. And then we're going to open to take hands, answer additional questions, and have just some time for open conversation.
And I think we've hit a bit of a.
You're good? Okay.
Yeah, platform.
Thank you. I think we can, Abby, can you leave it, stop sharing screen, but leave it open for anything else anybody wants to put in? So that'll be open for the next 15 minutes as people want to put thoughts there. We have time to pick up questions and conversation now. We'll go first to the two hands we see. So David Stoff, I am going to let you unmute. You should be able to unmute now. Share your question.
Wow, am I audible now?
You are. Welcome.
Well, thanks very much. I'm David Stoff. I'm an Arlington resident, and my home abuts the Alewife Brook. And the CSO discharges that we're discussing here are not abstractions for me. The brook often inundates the greenway next to my house, and in the past, it's flooded my home. And, you know, I can smell the sewage in the brook from my porch in the summer. So of all the people here, I'm probably one of the few that sat through a similar presentation for the last CSO control plan 20 years ago. And, you know, I'd like to thank you all because it's an informative presentation. And in a lot of ways, this was always going to be the least contentious meeting that you hold. You're experts in the technology, and I appreciate talking to you and your perspective. You know, okay, so that said, I think you all understand that I've advocated for a treatment of these discharges for a long time. And I think you and everyone else in this presentation will come to understand that some form of localized treatment or storage is the only practical solution for this problem. So the future that you're talking about and that we're planning for, it's not only going to be flooding, but it can also be drought. And I think you're going to see that the water resources we're talking about have real value. And the availability of water has always been a regional strength for New England, and it sets us apart from the West and the South. You know, the origin of these discharges is Cambridge, Mass, and you have just unrivaled resources, and you're an innovation hub. And so I expected a little more creative use of the tools that you're presenting. And what I didn't see here was any mention of adaptive use of the wastewater that we're talking about as an option. You know, and it could be. And I think people will come to understand also that it's just the costs of these pollution control technologies that's going to make a lot of the decision. And if you looked at adaptive reuse, at least the ancillary economic benefits might lower the costs. In the Netherlands, they use wastewater to generate heat. The treated water could support hydroponic, agriculture or aquaculture. You know, all of these things could have a real economic impact for our community. You know, so I look forward to you presenting this kind of alternative in the upcoming alternatives analysis and take a serious look at adaptive reuse. Since I have one more minute, something I can just ask the other question I asked in the chat, which is if this wastewater, the volume of the CSO discharges were sent to Deer Island, how much would it cost for treatment? I mean, it's the flip side of the economic value you receive from keeping these outfalls open. If they were treated, just how much, if you sent it to Deer Island, how much would it cost?
Thank you, David.
Questions, one nebulous and one that's pretty straightforward and is looking for a number, and I don't expect an answer tonight. Thanks.
And thanks for your ongoing engagement. It's a long game here. Let's take Matt Romero next. Matt, you should be able to unmute now.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Matt Romero, and I am the Executive Director for the MWRA Advisory Board. And I'm sure I'm probably going to be one of the least popular comments for many of the people on this call who have shown some very thoughtful and some very engaged and heartfelt feedback here. But the Advisory Board and the Advisory Board's role and my role, we are statutorily created to represent the interest of the MWRA communities and its ratepayers. And the MWRA ratepayers have paid almost $1 billion already for the CSO program. And while we agree that further CSO reductions of merit and in an ideal world would be 100% eliminated, such major capital projects must balance benefits and costs. Our mantra has always been that it needs to be both green and fair. That is to say, it needs to be environmentally sound and ratepayer equitable. And I think the best way I can probably put this is just to simply quote Judge Stearns, who has been closely monitoring the MWRA's progress on its CSO long-term control plan in his most recent compliance order from May 2023. Quote, I recognize, as the MWRA posits, that there may come a point of diminishing return at which spending an additional $100 for a $1 incremental benefit would make no sense from a public policy view. In the words of a distinguished former justice, the reason that it matters whether the nation spends too much to buy a little extra safety is that the resources available to combat health risks are not limitless. That would be former Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Matthew. Sarah Bell, I'm going to let you talk, and then we're gonna take a couple from the typed Q&A, and then we'll come back to Patrick and Kristen.
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate that I think those of us who live within shouting distance of the CSOs should be not have a special voice, but we should be distinguished in our, I live in Cambridge, I live within shouting distance of CSOs, and I think that's different than living in East Cambridge or in Harvard Square or in West Cambridge or in East Somerville or in Winter Hill. I think those of us who live with this deserve to be, we're not special, but we do have special circumstances. And I also think that the city my understanding is that the work in West Cambridge was done because of a court order. West Cambridge got dug up and fixed up, and a lot of work was done. And I'm just wondering whether court orders might need to be involved again to get the city of Cambridge or Somerville or Boston to do the right thing and separate this sewer and stormwater. Because to me, that's the only plan that makes sense, but it's going to be a pain in the neck. But we have to buy into this, and we need to live in the 21st century, at least in this manner. So that's a question. Is this about court orders? Because that's the only plan that I can see that really makes a huge difference for Somerville or Cambridge to really fix the problem.
Thank you, Sarah. Any responses to that before we take a couple questions from the chat? No, there's EPA and DEP requirements for action, which I'm not going to say correctly. So anyone on the technical team could mention those. I think maybe not right now. Maybe people are reaching the end of the evening. Thank you, Sarah. Let's go now. Elizabeth, do you want to pick up one or two from the written questions?
Sure. There's one question about sort of interagency coordination. Was written, can MWRA please tell us what you're doing to engage partner state agencies, DCR, DOT, and MBTA, for example, on potential spaces for green and gray infrastructure? You're uniquely positioned to do this on behalf of us citizens. I have heard nothing about collaboration between state agencies.
Yes, I'll take a stab at that one. We aren't quite there yet. I think we are, still in the phase where we're going to be developing alternatives, and those alternatives obviously will require space. When we get to that point, we will be looking for areas that may be accessible for siting large infrastructure or wetlands or whatever it may be. We're not quite there yet. I know there have been a few meetings that have been held with I think we're going to have one with Army Corps coming up, talking about Alloy Brook to get a better perspective of what may be going on there. But I think these collaborations will come in time, and we haven't got there quite yet. Feel free to help me out on this one, others, Cambridge and Somerville.
Not seeing anybody unmute, so I think they must be in concurrence, Brian. Thank you. Elizabeth, one more?
Yes. Well, there are some questions, and I'm going to try to sort of capture a few in one, but just sort of asking for clarification about really what's the true end goal of the project. And this kind of gets to the question that a previous commenter or a comment a previous commenter made about sort of, how far can we get? Would any of the partners be able to sort of say what we're aiming towards?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's a little hard to predict right now, right? This is a planning process whose goal is water quality improvement and the reduction and elimination of CSOs to the maximum extent possible. And part of that is an analysis and a review with DEP and EPA. They are the arbiters and the enforcers of the legislation, and they are the final determiners of what it is that the parties need to do. So at this point, I don't think we know, other than satisfy the requirements of DEP and EPA, and our own constituents, exactly what the final outcome would be. And that's why we're doing the analysis, and that's why again we're doing this outreach to understand what people want to see and what the preferences are, so that we can gear a plan that ticks off a lot of boxes. There's been less discussion of it tonight, although Julie did bring it up and others have brought it up, on like green stormwater infrastructure and the co-benefits of green stormwater infrastructure and the co-benefits of other projects. And to the extent that we can glean out how much focus there should be on that and what benefits are beneficial, we start defining a plan and working towards that. So I'm unable to articulate or guess at this point in time what exactly the outcome of this planning process will be. Sewer separation in this neighborhood, a tank of this size at this location, green stormwater infrastructure in these locations. Like we're going through the process and trying to find out what works and what will bring the maximum benefits for the dollars invested. But I don't have a picture of it in my head.
Thank you, Rich.
Rich, it sounds like what you're sort of saying is what we're trying to work towards is what you just said, which is the sort of best use of public resources and the most sort of, feasible and optimized solution. But you can't say what that solution looks like until you have input from constituents and guidance from regulators, right? So sounds like that's
and a whole bunch of modeling from our excellent technical team, most of whom are on here tonight. So big shout out to the firms that are working hard for us. And frankly, while I'm at it, I do want to also thank Consensus Building Institute, CBI, for running this meeting. It's that part of this is also very important. And I think the way that tonight has been run and the data that we're gathering here and the conversations we're having, we would not have been able to do that without the expertise of CBI. So thank you.
Rich. I want to take a few final hands. We are approaching the end of the allotted time for our meeting. But I think let's at least get Patrick and Kristen in and see where we are on time. And I will say there have been 88 questions answered in writing, which is just epic. And there are a few more still open in writing. Patrick, please go ahead.
Great. Thank you, everybody. And thank you to the team that's presenting tonight. I look at this group of people on the screen and I am really always amazed at the years of experience and that you all bring to this. And I'll state that I think for myself and Mystic River Watershed Association, our goal is elimination of CSOs. And I hope that's the goal that you're all shooting for as well. I have two questions. One is around what efforts have gone underway so far by this team to engage with our elected officials about federal funding. And the second question is around the experience that's outside this room. We are often hearing about progress having been made in New York City, in Pittsburgh, in Kansas City, in Portland, is there value of a technical review to help turn over options and approaches that this team hasn't considered? Anyway, or do you already feel like you've got the dream team here? So just two quick questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. Anybody want to pick up those threads?
Sure, I can take this one.
Great, thanks, Jim.
Patrick, thanks for the questions. Just to address the first one, part of our financial and affordability analysis, we'll be looking at, all funding sources, including federal and state programs. That is something that is ongoing right now. I don't think we've reached out to any individual representatives at this time, but that is something that we will be doing. And just on the second question, yes, we have been looking at solutions elsewhere in the country for CSO problems. MWRA was able to connect with some colleagues, and we had a great meeting with folks from the city of New York on how they've implemented green stormwater infrastructure to address CSOs, how they went about doing that, how they were able to establish credits for that work that they've done. So yes, we'll definitely be looking at others who have implemented, innovative solutions to addressing CSOs.
Thank you, Jim. Let's go to Kristen Anderson. Kristen, you can now speak.
Hi. Hopefully you can hear me. My dog is barking in the background. My name is Kristen Anderson. I'm from Save the Alewife Brook. This summer, the Alewife Brook flooded over its bank twice, sending untreated sewage pollution into the Alewife Greenway path, which folks use to get from Mass Ave to the Alewife T. It is a heavily used transportation corridor. And on August 8th, we saw folks biking, jogging, and pushing baby carriages through untreated sewage pollution. They had no idea there was sewage in that water. They just saw puddles in the park. And I have had the Alewife Brook flood water in my home. My neighbors have had it in their home. We got sick from it. So I just want to impress upon Cambridge, Somerville, and MWRA that you have an amazing opportunity now to fix a really terrible problem. So please, I implore you to be the heroes that you are meant to be and end untreated sewage pollution in Alewife Brook. The Alewife needs a CSO treatment facility or a 25-year level of CSO control. We need green stormwater infrastructure and storage and all of these things that you'll be looking at. You should be looking at all of the state land along the Alewife Brook, as well as solutions, green stormwater infrastructure solutions further upstream, where the rainfall lands, tree trenches to reduce heat islands in the future. Somerville could be an incredibly beautiful city if you had more trees. So please, again, be the heroes that you can be and solve the problem. And I look forward to working with all of you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. We are about to wrap up. I know there are still hands up. There are still questions open. I want to make space for that. And I think that will just continue. We have answered 93 questions in writing at this point, plus some questions, many questions verbally, but I want to invite the technical team. Any final pieces you can grab and respond to that you're seeing right now while we're together before we wrap? And then right, our interpretation is stopping momentarily, so we are going to stop the meeting. But anything final, we'll go to Luchika for a couple of next steps. All right.
Among our next steps, could we just note a place where folks could reach out if they have further questions or comments? Because I know we won't be able to satisfy every question in the next 30 seconds.
Yep, Luchika's going to give contact information. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So, thank you, everyone. I know this process is long and frustrating, but for the next year, we will continue to incorporate feedback from the public. We will have a survey that is exactly mimicking the Menti poll today, and that will be open until December 31st for people to, redo it if they want, put more great suggestions like the adaptive reuse for wastewater. And then we will start creating, selecting, and evaluating alternatives that could get us to, reducing or eliminating CSOs in the Alewife, Charles, and the Mystic. And we will come back to you to present hopefully some of the numbers you've been looking for today, right? Like volumes of storage and cost. That's part of the affordability analysis. So we hope to hold our 4th meeting in the summer of 2024. And Erica, if you want to go to the next slide, please. As a reminder, we do have a joint website that where we post our progress, recordings, the PowerPoint presentations, surveys, any other information that we can. This is voice.somervillema.gov/joint-CSO-planning. You can also subscribe there to receive updates about the projects. You can also contact the folks who've been talking today, Catherine Woodbury for Cambridge at cwoodbury@cambridgema.com. Myself, Luchika Hiller for Somerville, lhiller@somervillema.gov. And for MWRA, Jeremy Hall at jeremy.hall@mwra.com. And I want to thank everyone for joining.
Thank you, Luchika. The video of this will be on the website, and the survey is open till the end of December. Share your thoughts, tell your friends. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening. Good night.